So we have finally a complete set for Chaos Legion now. And I know we've done this several times, so I don't want to rehash it just because we have a new summoner. But with the addition of Lily Shieldball, I have to ask, just in general, now that we have the complete set, and let me go here to core. It's hard to take out Untamed, it's hard to take out Dice, it's hard to take out Rift Watchers. But when you think about the power dynamics and the hierarchy of power, maybe let's call it, within Chaos Legion itself, where does this shift now when you take everything into account? So you got, Lily and Quicks as the summoners for Dragon. You're going to have your rare and legendary summoners and then all the monsters. Is it, I think 6 months ago, people would have said Kelia is at the top, right? Water would be at the top because of Kelia, even with Grandmaster Wraith, even with Yasik. But since that time, we've gotten powerhouses like Immortalis. I would say Astral Entity is pretty good. I know people might sleep on Possibilis, but if I can throw it to you guys, and whoever wants to go first, feel free to jump in. How do you feel the power hierarchy now stands that we have a complete set with Chaos Legion?
I would say it feels really balanced, right? It feels a lot like rock, paper, scissors. If you're paying attention to the progression that someone plays during their ranked battles, you can put together a really effective counter, either a counter or some sort of strategy to give you a better chance of winning, right? If you look at the prior sets, Untamed specifically, right? If you had a Jotun, if you had a Kitty, you knew you were pretty much going to win. With this, set of legendary cards specifically, right? They're really balanced to go against each other, and I think it's a good change.
Okay. All right. What about you, Tails?
Yeah, I agree with Darkest Night. I think these summoners, especially the legendary ones here, are quite balanced. There's not one go-to that you say, I want to use this summoner all the time necessarily, like a Kitty or a Jotun were in the past. But I will say that, as Darkest Night alluded to, they're very specialized. So there are certain mana levels or certain rule sets that I go to by default, certain summoners I look at first to play, especially if I'm going against a lot of bots, because I'll optimize my play that way. And yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I think they're balanced. And I will say that, Darkest Night and I were doing test battles on the Mav server yesterday, and we had some really great battles, and it was just interesting to see our choices of the Chaos Legion summoners depending on the rule sets. And we had some really interesting results, and I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see good variety. You're going to see a lot of positioning depending on the rule sets, with some people going with the obvious choice and others going with a counter to that choice. So I think there's going to be a lot of pre-game kind of meta analysis, and especially with the 3 rule sets now, it really, I think, makes you think about your summoner choice a lot more carefully nowadays.
Okay. It's interesting that you say that, because yesterday when we were testing, on a couple of occasions, our teams looked almost exactly alike, right? Like, we picked the same summoner, we picked a lot of the same cards, same strategy. So it's almost like with the 3 rule sets, right? You're kind of guided to the right choice of which one you should pick. And if you don't pick that right selection of cards, not just the summoner, but the supporting cast, right? Then you're at a disadvantage, right? Like, easily at a disadvantage. So you really have to know the game and really make choices based on that.
Okay. All right. I found, I want to press in a little bit further with this, because I found both of your answers to be way too diplomatic. So let's break it down into summoners. All right. Because I would say, the reason is because you mentioned supporting cast. I still think, in my opinion, that if you just look at monsters, like, Water wins by far. Like that trio, the synergy with what's his name, with River Helendale, Wave Brood. Like, there's just so many good monsters on the Water team. So if you disagree with that, let me know which set of monsters you think are stronger. But actually, what I wanted to get into is, now that we have complete sets of 2 summoners for each, who is your duo? Who is your tag team when you're just looking at these cards on the screen? Again, you can pair them with any monsters, wild, modern, it doesn't matter. But between the combination, if you could only have Chaos Legion summoners, for example, right? For a lot of people who are in the game now, or maybe coming into the game very soon, what my question is how, not necessarily how would you rank them, but like who are your go-to because they provide either the most power or they provide the most versatility or diversity of kind of abilities that man, if I like, and let's take this with like the arena run thing that Weirbeard has talked about on Walking Keys and Gang's channel, right? Like if you had to go with a pair of summoners, who's your tag team? I'll throw it to Darkest Night first.
Yeah, let's go Tails.
Oh, let's go Tails first. All right.
He's a guest.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question after sound. For me, like you mentioned, the water team just inherently in Chaos Legion is so strong with the synergies and the cards. And Bakir is just a game breaker in my mind. He's just so good.
Mhm.
But when I look at these summoners, the summoners that, if we take Lily out of the equation because she's so new and we could really, maybe can't say for certain where she'll play, but I think we kind of know. But for me, most recently, like say in the last, within the last month or so prior to this, I would have said Yasik and Wraith would have been my go-tos. But now, honestly, I'm feeling Immortalis. I think that card is really a lot better than people thought it was when it was first released, because from an Untamed perspective, I actually own Mimosa and I love Mimosa.
Yeah.
And with her going to Wild soon, Immortalis is a slam dunk. Darkest Night can tell you what I did with Immortalis and some double silences against some of his teams. And it's so good. And then you've got the Shatter. When you combine Shatter with like a double strike, monsters that Earth has plentiful copies of, you can really just do some really nasty damage. So I do like Immortalis. I honestly have not played with Astral Entity enough to really say how good it is. I know with cards like Nightmare and some camouflage and stuff, you can do really well. I would say that the card for me that is more situational than anything is Possibilis. It can win for sure, but it's just a little slow. For me, it can really get off to a slow start, and against a speed team like a Yasik, it just sometimes doesn't have a chance. So that's kind of my analysis. Now, I'll also put a little asterisk by that too, because there's a lot of change still coming our way. We a lot of us playing in, let's say, Diamond and Champion have not had the opportunity really to play with Soulbound reward cards yet from a meta perspective. So we really can't say for sure how some of these summoners will react with some of the new abilities like Weapons Training and Martyr and some of the new cards. So I think this book has yet to be written. And then if this movie studio deck comes in April timeframe, again, the whole thing's going to be, thrown upside down. So, to your point, I think you mentioned this on previous videos, is from a card perspective, be careful how you invest here, because the meta is going to change rapidly. And, we're just talking about Soulbound cards and movie studio cards, not even talking about Rebellion yet. This game moves very quickly. So if you're saying now that Immortalis and Yasik are the bee's knees, well, next week it could be Astral Entity and Possibilis, right? You just never know.
Well, okay, that was actually a great analysis, but I think I misspoke in what I was trying to say. I think you picked like Yasik and Grandmaster Wraith at the beginning, and my whole point was if you had to pick a splinter based on the two summoners it has, right? So if you're picking Yasik, that also means you're picking Tarsa. Like which splinter has the most powerful summoners just within Chaos Legion? And again, I'm saying you can use it with whatever monsters, and I know that the balance of power will shift time and time again, but just between the two summoners here, two summoners for each, which would you pick?
Yeah, honestly, it's hard because I don't use Tarsa on my main. I don't even have Tarsa on my main. I don't have General Sloan on my main, so I don't even use those summoners. So for me, but
that matters. I think that's important to know.
Yeah, but certainly Fire and Life I use to win in Modern, but I use Wraith and Yasik when I play them, and I don't usually play them in low mana matches. Or if I play them in low mana matches, I'll use something like Lorna for Life, and for Fire, I'll use something like Skargor or Quinn. So
Fair enough. Okay, what about you, Darkest Night?
Earth. And I know it's shocking to hear me say that.
I know,
Yeah,
but
you knew I was going to say that too. So yeah, Earth.
I mean, but it does say a lot about how powerful Immortalis is, and actually how powerful Obsidian is. I mean, I know
Yep.
+1 magic might seem so overdone, but at the same time, it can come in handy in so many situations. Now, to both of your points, when I asked the first question about balance, right? I think what's interesting to see here is you can kind of see that the market has balanced everything somewhat accordingly. And I'm gonna take out the dragons. Actually, whatever, that's fine. We can leave them in. But I'm gonna take them out for the purposes of this. Now, I would say between all of the Chaos Legion rare summoners, so just these guys,
Yeah.
right? It's clear that Kelia was the top and has been the top for a very long time. And then when you talk about balance, Possibilis is actually the worst when it comes to the legendary summoners. So you have a nice balance there. Grandmaster Wraith, I know the market may not be, these cards are all kind of similar in value, but both, I think Grandmaster Wraith is quite powerful, and Tails was mentioning it too. And so you have probably one of the more powerful legendary summoners in terms of Grandmaster Wraith paired with someone like General Sloan. I think what's interesting though is the fact that you mentioned Immortalis with Obsidian, because that can be a powerhouse in many situations. And I think to Tails' point, Astral Entity it's not underutilized, but I think we just haven't figured out the best way to use it, or it's very niche in its use cases. But I do like the combination with Astral Entity and Thaddeus Brood, mainly because I'm not saying that's my favorite necessarily, but I just like it because Astral Entity to me with the dodge represents a balance where if you're playing a non-magic game, this card, in my opinion, Astral Entity becomes very powerful. And if you are playing a magic game, you could go with Thaddeus Brood to get that -1 on your opponent.
Yeah, you have options. Absolutely.